This book is so meaningful to us. We believe this book can be so meaningful for you. We have been where you have been. We want to help you to better understand the impact the loss of your father had on your life and how you can heal from that loss. We have, through personal experience and exploration of this issue, become passionate about sharing our knowledge and helping women better understand why they may be acting and feeling the way that they do, because they are fatherless. As we were preparing the material for this book, we knew that we needed something living alongside it to help women further see themselves through the stories of others. We are creating a 30-minute documentary, The Fatherless Daughter Project, that contains intimate and compelling interviews with a diverse group of fatherless daughters to showcase their resilience and how they've created success in their lives. Beyond the documentary, we wanted to write this book to share our stories, the stories of women who have lost their fathers, and most important, successful strategies for coping, surviving, and thriving despite the loss. Each woman's story is unique to her own circumstances, but fatherless daughters also share some commonalities. Karin's losses were the consequences of divorce, adoption, and dysfunction. Denna's losses were because of divorce and death. While writing this book, Denna and I spent countless hours talking about our own journeys because we were both willing to search our own lives. Amazing, life-changing moments have come along the way. It was during our first major rewrite that I realized I needed to have a conversation with my father, my natural father. He was not the dad who raised me, but he was the father who created me and had now become increasingly present in my life. As the years passed, we got together more regularly, and he has become a wonderful grandpa to my 3 children. Although my children got their grandpa, I still felt a void. We had never talked about what all those years of his absence did to my life, and I continued to struggle with it. On a sunny June morning, Dad was paying us his regular Friday visit. He knew I was writing a book on fatherlessness, but we had not spoken about it at length. We had talked about a lot of things. We just never talked about us. I think I had avoided the sensitive topic because I knew the conversation would be difficult. There were several reasons for his absence during my childhood, including his giving me up for adoption to my new father. His and my mother's stories about the past were different, which left me confused. Without understanding the story, I had felt abandoned by him most of my life. Being disconnected from my adopted father 20 years later added stinging salt to the wound. Still, I didn't want my truth to run my birth father off and leave me abandoned again. Although I was waiting for the ideal moment for the conversation, I did not know that it was going to happen that morning. He caught me off guard when the children left the room to play. As the room quieted, he walked slowly around the breakfast table, putting his hand atop the curve of one of the chairs. He said something I could tell he had been waiting to say. "Karin, I was looking at your fatherless daughter's research study online." He smirked and shook his head, pausing. his eyes fixed on the white tablecloth. Heart pounding, I stopped still at the kitchen counter and waited. The conversation was happening. Do you think you are fatherless? I mean, I'm your father, and I'm right here. We stood still for a moment as the challenge hung in the air between us. Him looking at me and me looking at everywhere for a safety net. Oh my God, what do I say? I'm not ready. I can't do this. I'm scared of the words I want to use. My heart's thumping was making me feel faint, so I took a deep breath. I had to overcome my decades-old insecurity to speak as I scrambled to find honesty in my first sentence. Silently, I told myself, you have what it takes, Karin. You need to just say it. I had to push through this scary place to get rid of the fears that had resided in me for so long, for too long. I steadied myself and looked him in the eye. Dad, let me start by saying I am so glad that you are here now. I don't want to lose this. I'm so grateful that you are in our lives and that my kids are getting their grandpa. I paused, reaching deep inside for a new boldness to continue. But Dad, I did lose my father when I was a little girl. You did give me out for adoption. You let another man raise me, and he and I are now estranged too. You don't know what I went through. I lost a close connection with you for a long time. There is so much to the story that we have never talked about. Things were bad, and I was in a lot of pain for a lot of years. I took a break, as I could feel he wanted to interject. You think it was bad for you? He said. Do you know how hard that was for me? I felt that familiar spike of cortisol flood my bloodstream. As he changed the subject from me to him, I wanted my turn today. Yes, I know it was hard for you, Dad, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. But it happened. It happened to me. I was a little girl. I was the daughter, and you were the father. You were the adult. I did not know what to do. I was a child. He continued with his truth. He wanted me to know how much he had wished to be involved in my life, but that he felt he had no choice. I had heard the story many times before and did not want to get into the details again. I wanted to be heard. I needed to let my dad know about the lost years, the depression, and the negative consequences that played out over my life. I talked about the cutting, the tears, and the traumas I rarely call by name. As I cried, he seemed to watch me in confusion. I could tell he was lost in my retelling, but I was not going to let him change the subject to avoid what I wanted to say. I was getting this out, right here. I took a very deep breath and told him something I had never said before. Dad, please stop changing the subject. I need to talk about this. I need to talk about me. And I need you to listen. I need you to be here right now and hear me. I have to tell you this. You did not protect me. You did not come in and fight off the bad guys, even after I tried to tell you what was happening. I need you to be there. I need you to stand up for me. I needed someone to stand up for me. Even now, we are standing here and I'm crying and telling you all of this and you are avoiding me. He stood very still, surprised by my forthrightness, but he was listening. And then, in a very vulnerable leap of faith, I asked for exactly what I needed. "Dad," I trembled. I need you to say to me, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry this happened." And then I need you to hug me." I waited. As I stood wiping away my tears, my dad did something different. He got quiet too. He closed his eyes. Then he stepped forward and hugged me. He kept himself in the room and in the moment and with me. Then he said slowly into my ear, "Karin, I'm sorry I wasn't there." And with those 7 words, I got a gift that I had been waiting to receive for 40 years. Recognition, an apology, a hug. As we embraced, I felt the gaping hole between us beginning to fill. So that was Karin's story. Now we are going to I am going to read about Denna's story. I lost my dad twice. The first loss was at the age of 3 when my parents divorced. The second loss was when I was 13 and he was killed. It wasn't until 2008, when I was 37, that I had a major breakthrough about how I could use my story, my life, to help other fatherless women. After getting a divorce and moving to another state to start my life anew, I started feeling like my old life was infiltrating my new life. My fear of abandonment had come back in full swing now that I had walked away from everyone I knew and loved. My new relationship was not working. I was hanging on for dear life, trying to avoid facing my past. After our third and final breakup, devastated, I finally realized that changing area codes was not going to fix me. In order to fix me, I would have to do the inevitable, get alone and into therapy. Until then, I had not known how upset I was about my dad. I thought the source of my problem was more about finding and losing love, not about the biggest love that I had lost. Before long, I had thrown my entire self into the process of shifting through my past. Tear by tear, I was putting the pieces back together. On a particularly emotional day, my therapist said something that rattled me to my core. He leaned in and said, poignantly, "Denna, the only thing you seem to know for sure about your dad is how he died. What you need to fill in are the gaps on how he lived. Who was he as a person? Who was he as a father?" I was shocked, but he was right. I had no idea how my dad was beyond that he was a sharp dresser, did occasional magic tricks, and had a glass of chocolate milk every morning instead of coffee. The rest I had gathered from a photo album and the occasional story I had heard. I knew that asking a lot of questions about him would upset my mom, and so I learned to listen instead of explore. My dad was a taboo subject. The older I got, the more I seemed to miss this man named Jim, who was my father. I was desperate to know him. I was desperate to know the other half of me, where I had come from. Because my mother and father had been through a tumultuous divorce, I already knew that my mom would not be my go-to person to fill in all the blanks. Believe me, I had tried. After a lot of deep thoughts, I decided to reach out to my dad's brother, my Uncle Bill. We had always been in touch. He sent me money on all of the major holidays and always said, I love you when he spoke, yet we never spoke about my father, his brother, at length. When I was 16, I got up the nerve to write Uncle Bill a letter asking some very generic questions. What was my dad's favorite color? Did he like to fish? But what I really wanted to know was, did he love me? Did he like being my father? Did I remind my uncle of my father? Did he know who had killed him? My uncle wrote back and answered all of my generic questions. My dad's favorite color was blue, and yes, he enjoyed fishing. I wanted to know so much more, yet I was too afraid to ask. Life moved on. After years of soul searching, I decided to write a book to fill in the holes of my own story. I needed to see my own story in writing to understand it. I thought that by going back and talking through all of the highs and lows, I could help not only myself, but perhaps others. In order to be accurate about the details of my story, I spent almost every weekend for the next year with my Uncle Bill in Charleston, South Carolina. We walked on the beach, we held hands, we laughed, we cried. They painstakingly helped me put my dad's story together and filled me with love and acceptance along the way. I wrote day and night, reading excerpts to my uncle, family, and therapist. It took me about 5 years to finish the book. The process was both healing and extremely difficult. I was exceedingly better as a person and as my father's daughter. My coping skills had been replaced with new and improved ways of handling my past and future. My mind was no longer jumbled and confused. I was free from my past and excited for my future. Now came the hard part. I had to put myself and my story out there if I was going to help other fatherless daughters. Sitting at my computer one day, I came across information on an upcoming show about family secrets on the Today Show website. Instinctively, as I tied my life's secret into a single paragraph, I knew that I was about to change my life. There would be no turning back, and I knew that I was ready. My God told me that I would be on that show, sitting on that couch, being interviewed by Meredith Vieira for the entire world to see. Within weeks, the producers came to Atlanta to interview me, along with the rest of my family. My uncle respectfully declined to be interviewed. One by one, we were exposing the truth as we talked about something that before had been kept private, how I became fatherless. In a weird way, the secret that I held tightly for all of those years was slowly bringing my dad's death to the forefront. My family and I spoke more about my dad in those 48 hours than we had in the 24 years since he had passed. A few days later, when one of the producers called, I heard a sentence that would change the course of my life. We want you to come be on the show live to tell your story. It was really happening. I did not know whether to scream out loud or vomit. What I did know was that I was finally ready to face whatever was coming head on. The next Monday morning, I found myself in New York, in front of cameras, in a tailored blue dress with my palms sweating. Oh God, I thought, I've done this to myself. I sat still and watched along with the rest of the world as my story was told on the screen right in front of me, like a family home video. One thought ran wild circles through my mind. Now 20 million people will know why I am fatherless. 20 million people. I am fatherless because someone out there killed him. Oh my God, is this really happening? But to tell the truth, despite my 24-year-old fear, deep down in my soul, I didn't want to hide anymore. Somehow, I had found the courage to tell the truth. For years, I'd been telling everyone that my dad died on a heart attack when I was 13. It was my go-to story, but on live television, I spoke what always had been unspeakable in my family. The real story. My dad had been killed. We don't know why. We never found out who did it. We never talked about it until now. And the secret was out, right there, as I sat across from Meredith Vieira, talking about the past, trying to be the strong woman I had taught myself to be. I was finally taking charge of my past and fulfilling my destiny. I thought, my story is going to help someone. Right now, I'm talking to all of the fatherless daughters out there who want so badly to feel better about their situations. I'm showing them that I am one of them, and I am okay. The irony was that once I shared my secret, they instantaneously felt free. I instantaneously felt free, more free than I had ever felt. In fact, it was one of the single most powerful days in my life. I had told the world my fatherless story. Then I waited, and guess what? Nothing horrible happened. I didn't fall into a deep depression. I was not shunned from my social groups. I did not curl up into a thumb-sucking ball on the floor. In fact, the opposite happened. I had actually found my calling and myself. I had inklings that this was my purpose all along. Although I talked that deep secret inside of my past, something inside of me had always known that I would one day help other women who had gone through losing their dads. I couldn't deny persistent nudge. I couldn't deny the persistent nudge inside of me to keep looking, keep listening, and keep searching for others who were like me. My fatherless daughter radar was always on high alert, beep beep beeping in my head of everywhere I went. I was the girl at the dinner party who sat huddled at the end of the table into the midnight hour, talking with a broken-hearted young woman about her recent breakup, which ultimately ended up being a conversation about why she was really hurting so deeply her father. Seriously, it always came down to fatherlessness when women opened up to me. Every week, I would watch CBC's Sunday Morning, and if the person they were featuring mentioned being fatherless, I would jot down the name and research more about her story. I distinctly recall being mesmerized, curled up on my couch, watching Patricia Cornwell talking about being abandoned by her father. Everywhere I turned, there was another daughter with another story. With each one, the meaning of the story started to bring more clarity and purpose to my own life. I listened intently to the words that Bethany Frankel used when describing her own fatherless story to her therapist on her reality show. Demi Moore's story had me emotional as I read about how her father abandoned her before she was born. Anytime Caroline Kennedy spoke about her father, I was taking notes. Intrigued at the journey of her life, I felt a connection with this woman. My passion for fatherless daughters was all-consuming. I started keeping a running list of women and statistics that I found noteworthy. I wrote on napkins, in notebooks, and on my computer. I talked the facts about into my brain, and often it seemed the stories were all I heard on days filled with so much other white noise. It became what some might call my obsession, but I believe it to be my calling. I felt that calling from deep within when I spoke to anyone who was fatherless. I was driven by it. People had told me for years to try to just let it go. I wondered if they were right, and so I tried. I questioned many times if I was stuck, if the pain of losing my dad was just something that I would never be able to completely shake. But everything had led me to this. It was who I was. As I walked out, the Today Show said that brisk fall morning. It hit me like a ton of bricks. It was not what happened to my father. It was what happened to me because I did not have my father. Therefore, I would have to go back to the drawing board. I would need to write a book that spoke of all of our stories, not just my own. That was my revelation. That was my breakthrough. The more I let go of the secret and shame of my own father's desertion and death, the more my destiny became clear. I wanted to help every single fatherless daughter out there let go of being stuck in the past, shed the shame, and take control of her own destiny. Fatherlessness does not have to define you. In fact, it can redefine who you want to become.